My sister planted drugs in my room and called the police on me. My parents backed her up as witnesses, knowing I was innocent. Just take the blame, they told me. But then my lawyer showed them this. My mom went completely pale. My dad couldn't speak. It didn't feel like the day my life fell apart. There was no music, no pit in my stomach, no sudden chill down the back of my neck like people always describe when something awful is about to happen. It was just a regular Tuesday, the kind that starts out boring and stays boring until all of a sudden it doesn't. If I'd known what was coming, that by dinner I'd be in handcuffs with my parents politely nodding while I got arrested in my own hallway, I probably wouldn't have worn socks with holes in them. But I didn't know. Not until the knock. There were two of them, one tall, one built like a gym teacher who forgot how to smile, both in uniform, calm, practiced. Emma Reynolds. My mouth went dry, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because no one expects cops to show up on your doorstep like you ordered them off a menu. Yeah, I said, half answering, half asking. We received a tip about illegal substances at this address. The tall one said like he was reading off a menu. We'd like to come in. Behind them, the street looked exactly the same. Same mailbox, same tree, same neighbor's dog peeking through the fence. But everything felt tilted just a little. Okay, I said, stepping back. I didn't even think to say no because I wasn't guilty. Because at that moment, I thought this was about my sister. I followed them down the hallway, still confused, still trying to make sense of what they'd said. Illegal substances. Had Jessie finally pushed things too far? Then I saw my mom. She was in the living room, calm, polished, tea in hand, like she was expecting guests, not cops. Oh, officers, she said, setting the cup down with a clink. Emma's room is the third door on the left. I blinked. What? Why my room? No one answered. My dad was standing nearby. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look at me at all. The officers didn't wander. They went straight to my room like they already knew the way. Jessie stood at the top of the stairs, leaning on the banister. Her hair was tied up, hoodie, leggings, phone in hand. She didn't say a word, didn't blink. Benny, my old dog, lifted his head when they walked in. Didn't bark, just wagged his tail once, slow like he wasn't sure what kind of moment this was. The taller officer scanned the room. The other went to my dresser, and then, without so much as a pause, he pulled open the bottom drawer. There it was, a sealed Ziploc bag full of pills. I laughed like an actual short, stunned laugh. Because what else do you do when reality jumps the rails? Okay, that's not mine, I said. Neither officer reacted. They'd heard it before. I turned around, fast. My parents were standing in the hallway. Mom's hands were clasped like she was praying. Dad still hadn't looked me in the eye. Tell them, I said louder. Now you know that's not mine. One of the officers turned to them. You said earlier you've seen her with this bag. My mom nodded. Soft, too soft. Yes, we didn't know what it was. But she's been distant. We thought it was stress. My dad added school, you know. But she's been spending a lot of time alone, acting erratic. It was like watching someone else's life fall apart, except it was mine. My room, my drawer, my name. You can't be serious, I said. Jessie, she's the one who Emma. My mom cut in, voice low. Don't make this worse than it already is. They cuffed me in the hallway. Benny stood up, unsure, and whined. One of the officers told him to stay back. Jessie hadn't moved. She just watched. Her eyes followed me all the way out the front door. No smile, no remorse, just blank like I was already gone. I didn't cry, not then. The cuffs were too tight. The air felt wrong. My skin felt wrong. Like I'd left it behind in the hallway, right next to the life I thought I had. The back seat of the police car was cramped. The window was smudged. As we pulled away, I watched the house shrink in the rearview mirror. It didn't look like a crime scene. It looked like home. And that made it worse. Jessie planted the drugs. My parents backed her up and I let them walk me out like I was the family embarrassment they'd finally gotten rid of, which come to think of it, maybe I was. There was always a golden child in our house, and it wasn't me. Jessie was born 3 years before me, and somehow magically, maybe genetically, she was everything they wanted. Bright, confident, photogenic, one of those kids who never had a messy room or a bad angle. When she cried in public, people gave her candy. When I cried, I got told to stop making a scene. I don't think my parents ever meant to make me feel invisible, but they did repeatedly, consistently, in ways so subtle it took me years to realize I wasn't imagining it. When Jessie brought home a lopsided clay bowl from art class, they cleared a shelf in the living room to display it. When I spent 3 days painting something for the school fair, it ended up in a drawer next to expired coupons. When Jessie had a piano recital, they rented chairs and made iced tea for the neighbors. When I was cast in a play, they forgot to come. Said they thought it was just a rehearsal. They weren't cruel, just selective with their attention. Like I only existed in the quiet moments between their pride and her performance. A background character with decent timing and quiet shoes. I used to think if I behaved perfectly, got the grades, made my bed, stayed out of trouble, they'd finally see me. But all it really did was make me easier to ignore. When Jessie turned 14, she begged for a dog. She made charts, wrote promises, said things like emotional support animal and responsibility building. My parents, of course, caved. Enter Benny, a weary, wide-eyed mutt who looked like someone had tried to build a terrier from a bad memory. Jessie loved him for exactly 3 weeks. Then she got bored, said he smelled, said he was too loud, said he scratched the floor. My parents nodded solemnly and started calling shelters. They actually said, "I remember this. Well, if no one takes him, we'll have to put him down," like he was an appliance past warranty. I was 11. I said I'd feed him, walk him, train him. They didn't believe me, but they didn't want to deal with him either. So they said, "Fine, fine," my mom said. "But he's your responsibility." He wasn't a responsibility though. He was the first thing in that house that ever chose me over Jessie. He slept curled against my legs. He barked when people yelled. He'd follow me room to room, tail thumping like I was his whole world. And yeah, maybe I became a little too attached. Maybe I talked to him more than I talked to people. But Benny listened. And sometimes that was enough. My grandfather was the only adult who saw me. He lived about 10 blocks away in a yellow house that smelled like toast and old wood. Whenever things got tense at home, which was often, I'd grab Benny's leash and say I was going for a walk. Then we'd slip off to Grandpa's and pretend we belonged somewhere. He wasn't like my parents. He didn't interrupt. He didn't offer solutions. He just made grilled cheese and nodded while I told him about school or books or how Jessie had screamed at me for using her shampoo. Sometimes I'd sit on his porch until the street lights came on. Sometimes I didn't want to leave at all. He's in his 90s now, still sharp, still calls every Sunday at a.m., still acts like I'm the one worth checking on. When Jessie left for college, the house got quieter. Not peaceful, just hollow. My parents started texting her every hour like she was a missing limb. She came back a year later. No warning, no explanation, just college was toxic. That was her entire summary. She locked her door a lot, took long showers, had friends come over at weird hours, guys I didn't know. One of them wore sunglasses indoors. Another called me little sis with a wink that made me want to burn the house down. I noticed the smell under her door, the slurred phone calls, the way she flinched when someone knocked aloud. But I didn't ask. In our house, asking meant overreacting. I thought I was imagining it. The way she hovered around me more, paused near my room, looked at me a beat too long. But I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was projecting. And even if I hadn't been, it's not like anyone would have listened. The next night, they put me in a holding cell with cinder block walls and a bench just wide enough to sit but not sleep. No one told me anything. No timeline, no charges. Just cold air and fluorescent lights that buzzed like they were mocking me. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even thinking. It felt like my brain had been drained and refilled with static. I pictured Benny lying by the window, ears perked every time a car passed. He wouldn't eat, not until he saw me. He was like that, loyal, to a fault, and I wasn't there. I thought about my parents saying, "We can't keep him now." Not under the circumstances. Like Benny was part of the evidence. Like he'd been contaminated too. I thought about Grandpa. I wondered if he'd gotten the call. If his voice had cracked when they said my name. Maybe he believed I was innocent. Maybe he didn't. Either way, I imagined the silence that must have followed. The kind that stretches between people who don't know what to say anymore. I looked down at my hands. My wrists still had faint red lines from the cuffs. I hadn't spoken to anyone since the officers drove me in. No one asked if I was okay. I don't think anyone cared. And the truth, I couldn't even blame them. Maybe I really was the invisible one. And maybe that made me the perfect person to disappear. You grow up thinking if you're quiet and good, they'll come around. They didn't. They just got better at pretending you didn't matter. They brought me into the visitation room like I was a prop in a courtroom drama. Fluorescent lights, cinder block walls, a table that had probably heard more betrayals than confessions. A guard stood near the back wall, pretending not to listen. My parents were already seated when I walked in. They looked like people waiting for a brunch reservation. Calm, civil, maybe slightly annoyed that things were running behind schedule. My mom gave me a soft smile. My dad did that slow, measured nod he always used when he didn't want to talk, but felt obligated to acknowledge someone's existence. I sat. No one spoke at first. Then my mom broke the silence. Are they treating you okay? Her tone was polite, almost warm, like she was asking if the Airbnb had clean towels. They gave me a sandwich, I said. She smiled again, like that answered something. My dad shifted in his seat. We sent over some toiletries. They'll probably get them to you soon. I didn't respond. I was too busy watching the way they wouldn't meet my eyes. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't fear. It was management, like they were trying to contain a situation they thought might still be salvaged. I finally said it, quiet, flat. You know, it wasn't me. Neither of them reacted. My mom took a breath like she was preparing for something scripted. Emma, we need to focus on what happens next. We can't change what's already happened. That's one way to avoid saying it out loud, I muttered. Dad leaned forward. No one's saying it was intentional. I turned my head toward him. You mean the drugs Jesse put in my drawer? That kind of unintentional. My mom winced just slightly. Emma, this isn't the time for stories. Stories like I'd come in here pitching fiction. You're really going to let this happen? I said, you're just going to sit there and let them do this to me. You're young, my dad said. This won't follow you forever. My mom nodded. It's better to keep things contained. If we escalate this, Emma, it could get worse for all of us. There, it was. The word they didn't say. Family, not Jesse. Not the truth. The unit, the appearance of things. I didn't say anything. I just watched them talk around it like it was something they couldn't see, like the air wasn't thick with it. They looked at me like they hoped I'd finally do something useful and disappear quietly. Then I asked the only question I actually cared about. What are you going to do with Benny? They blinked. My dad was the first to answer. He's fine. Then, after a pause, but he's old. You're not coming home anytime soon. My mom's tone softened too much, like she was trying to cushion a blow she knew I couldn't stop. It's not fair to leave him wondering. He doesn't understand what's happening. You're not putting him down. I didn't raise my voice, didn't move, just said it like a fact. She looked at me with that gentle, awful pity I hated more than her anger. We'll do what's best. I sat back. I didn't say another word because what was the point? They weren't here to check on me. They were here to hand me the script and to tell me without saying it that they were already halfway through the second act. They stood up to leave. My mom lingered for a moment and said it like a closing line. We found someone to represent you, a lawyer. Her name's Emily. She's very capable. Capable of what? They didn't wait for an answer. They left. I met the lawyer the next morning. Emily looked like she had something to prove and a schedule to keep. Probably my parents assumed that made her cheap or too inexperienced to push back. She had a blazer too big for her shoulders and a spiral notebook instead of a laptop. She didn't smile when she sat down. Emma, she said, reading my name off a file. I've reviewed the report and spoken with your parents. I bet you have. They're very concerned, she continued. They said this kind of behavior is out of character, but also that you've been withdrawn. Have you been feeling isolated lately? I looked at her, blinked, because I learned a long time ago to keep my mouth shut. She raised her eyebrows, but didn't challenge it. I want to go over the evidence with you, she said. We need to talk about the item found in your dresser. I didn't put it there, I said. My sister did. There was a pause. Not long, just enough to register. You're saying your sister planted it? She asked. Yes. And your parents? They know. They're helping her cover it. Emily folded her hands. Do you have any proof of that? I opened my mouth, closed it again. Then I remembered. It came like a flash. The bear. The stupid stuffed bear on my bookshelf with a tiny camera in its eye. Motion activated. Records to a micro SD card. Cheap. Maybe $30 online. No cloud upload. no Wi-Fi. I bought it last year when Benny started having little seizures. Just wanted to keep an eye on him when I wasn't home. I'd pop the SD card out after school, check the footage on my laptop. It wasn't high-tech. It wasn't even that good, but it worked. I never told anyone. Not because I was hiding it, but because no one cared about Benny except me. And if they knew I had a camera in my room, I'd never hear the end of it. But it faced the dresser, full view of the room. And if Jessie went in there while I was gone, it might have caught her. My pulse jumped, but I kept my face still because if I told Emily now, and she told my parents, that footage might not exist by the time anyone checked. I needed to get to it first. They gave me one phone call. I used it. My best friend picked up on the second ring. Hey, I said, I need a favor. Urgent? She asked if I was okay. I said no. There's a teddy bear on my bookshelf. I said, the one with the red bow. Inside is a camera. It records everything. I need you to go to my house, get Benny, and take the bear with you today. Don't ask questions. Just go. A pause then. Okay, I'm on it. I'm serious. I said, don't tell anyone. Don't leave it there. She said she wouldn't. I hung up and exhaled for the first time in what felt like days. I didn't know what the footage would show. I didn't know if the cards still worked, but it was something. A thread I could grab onto. The only thing in this whole nightmare that might still be mine to pull. They thought I'd go down quietly. They forgot who they raised. I didn't know if the camera had been on or if the card had filled up or if Jessie had somehow found it first and erased everything or if the bear had just sat there blinking at nothing like it always did. Passive. Useless. One more thing that couldn't protect me. I didn't know. So I waited for hours for a day. I stared at the walls of the holding cell and thought about all the versions of my life that might be playing out without me. Benny at the shelter. Grandpa hearing half the story. My parents repackaging me into something they could live with. Then an officer called my name, told me I had legal counsel waiting. They led me to a small concrete room with a table and 2 chairs. Leah was already there, flipping through a folder like she'd been waiting long enough to get bored. She looked up, set her pen down, and said, we have something. You're going to want to be there. She didn't show me the footage, just told me what was on it. Jessie, my room, the drawer, a Ziploc bag. Time-stomped. It's clear, Leah said. Deliberate? No confusion. Do they know? Not yet. But they will. She'd scheduled a meeting, pre-trial conference technically, just to clarify the family narrative before any further motions. Very professional, very neutral. My parents agreed to it. So did Jessie. They put us in a small room in the courthouse, the kind with laminate furniture and bad lighting. Everything beige, everything buzzing faintly, like the walls were sick of listening to people lie. Leah and I were already seated when they walked in. My mom was first, press blouse, tight jaw, like she'd spent the ride rehearsing ways to sound concerned. My dad followed, face unreadable. Then Jessie, arms crossed, hoodie sleeves pulled down over her hands like she thought shrinking would keep her from being seen. They sat across from us. Leah opened her folder. Calm, clinical, no small talk. Before we begin, she said, I'd like to share a short piece of video evidence. She turned the laptop toward them, clicked play. Jessie on video walked into my room like she belonged there. No hesitation, just nerves. She glanced around, paused at the doorway, and then crossed to the dresser. She pulled a Ziploc bag from her sleeve, opened the bottom drawer, slid it inside. She didn't touch anything else, didn't even look guilty. Then she left. Timestamp. One day before the arrest. My mom's face went white, not like she'd seen a ghost, more like she'd just become one. Her mouth parted, then closed again. Her eyes flicked toward Jessie, then away. My dad leaned forward slightly, elbows on his knees. He stared at the laptop like it might glitch and give him a different version. Jessie just sat there, stiff, watching herself betray me in real time. She didn't say anything until the footage ended. Then, like someone had unzipped her brain, she blurted. It was supposed to be nothing. She wasn't even supposed to get arrested. Leah turned the screen back toward herself. So, she said, would you like to revise your statements now? The silence was brittle. My mom broke first. We were trying to protect the family, she said, voice strained. You don't understand. No, I said. I do. I've always understood. That's the problem. Jessie turned toward me. You don't get it, she snapped. You made everything harder. You acted like a victim even before anything happened. I didn't mean for it to go this far. So framing me was what? I said. Plan B. Her eyes flashed. You wouldn't understand. You always think you're better than us. I don't, I said. I just think I deserve better than this. My dad finally spoke. This isn't helping, he muttered. He didn't say who it wasn't helping. Didn't say sorry. Didn't say mucho.